here at ACO Radio, American Communications Online, or any affiliated stations or websites are not responsible for what guest hosts or call-ins may say. All programming is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only.
Hello, world. Welcome to our ACO UFO Press Club meeting today with Jan Aldrich of Connecticut. He's been working over 50 years. He was 25 years with the U.S. government as far as being in the United States Army, and 25 years with the United States Post Office. Now, one thing that he is best known for was getting started as a child in high school at age 16 with NICAP and moving forward into the 1960s. And for the last 6 weeks, we've been working together to form a UFO association, and we're trying to get down a platform of people of the old guys, so to speak, and the women, ladies and gentlemen, that's worked in the United States of America. My company is American Communications Online, and I have built up TJ Morris ET Radio for the time of oral reports since June 2012, and I'm very proud that I've kept most of them. I deleted some, including some with Stan Friedman by accident back in the first year when I didn't know what I was doing properly. We've learned a lot, and I'm going to call him now because I'm using a direct connect, and this way it saves everybody a little money because we're all about being the author of our own life story, and we like to save money when we can and help each other out in our new organization. Now, I will tell you that the original concept was me and Stanton Friedman, for those of you that keep up with the old guys. And I would like to say that my call and election made sure was all about Ascension Age and bringing those out that wanted to tell their stories, knowing that alien civilizations exist. That's what I'm known for, and that's what we do here. So let me dial and see if I can't get Jan online. If so, we're going to continue this production. Hi, this is Theresa J. Morris with TJ Morris ET Radio. Is Jan Aldrich around? This is his sister, Suzanne, right? Or Susan? I guess we're on standby.
Hello?
Hi, are you ready to do the show? We're live and on the air, if you're ready.
Sure. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jan. Well, you know what it's like. So I've got ACO UFO Press Club, and today we've got 6 weeks into this, book 1. So this is episode 7 for those of you keeping up, and we hope to have you entertained today with educational entertainment with Jan and I. So Jan, any notes or any postscripts from last week that we need to cover?
Well, no, I don't think so. I think we've kind of gone over that several times.
Okay, where would you like to start today? Whatever you feel like talking about, your friends, confidants, anything to do with the old days, Stanton Friedman, George Filer, MUFON, or prior to that, NICAP. And we're getting down everything from back, I guess, all the way back to World War II forward. And
yeah, sure. Well, of course, I would say, after I returned from overseas and started on Project 47, that was about a 3-year job. What I did is I started out. Well, before I even started, I went out to the West Coast and looked through 3 of the big states for 1947, Idaho, Washington, and Oregon. And that was to demonstrate that there was still lots of material to find. after I put in for the grant, I started out in West Virginia. I already had gone to New York and Connecticut and a little bit in Massachusetts and Rhode Island, but after the grant was issued, I started out in West Virginia. And one of the places I visited was Clarksville, and that's the home of Gray Barker's files, and they're very interesting, and it's a local library that has his files, and they were able to preserve them. They put them in a historical house, and took up, I'd say, about the one of the upper floors in there. He was mostly a promoter, and he never said that he wasn't anything more than a promoter. He did collect a large amount of UFO material, and he had huge amounts of correspondence with everybody you could think of in the UFO field. So that's very, very valuable to go and visit his collection and make some copies from things that are there.
Now, how did you find out about him? Was he in one of the organizations?
Well, I always knew who Gray Barker was, but I didn't really know that his collection was there. So I just happened to be going to the University of West Virginia, and they mentioned, you ought to stop at Clarksville because of what you're looking for. So that's what I did, and I think I spent 3 days there, and I didn't get through everything. There's still plenty to go. And since then, Carl Flock, when he passed away, he also donated his material to Clarksville Library. So it's now been augmented with other people's collections. So that was
that's Clarksburg Library. Then is what he's made. Gray Barker's made that relatively famous now due to the Barker collection. That's right. Still the home, right? Did you copy a lot out of the Clarksburg Library of the Gray Barker UFO collection for West Virginia?
Well, yeah, I did. I copied some of the UFO authors that wrote to him, and one of my favorite researchers is Gladys Fiuso, who she was doing the same thing I did, and she was an air raid warden during the Second World War, and she had a UFO sighting while on Long Island, so it was very interesting to get her information about her and all the research that she had done. And she used to send everything she got to Barker, so that was a valuable person that had did, like some of the rest of us, library research and newspaper research. And she was real helpful in that. The other items were things like this. Somebody said Barker a novel about meeting extraterrestrials. And the answer that Barker sent back is very instructive. He said, I don't want fiction works. He says, I want somebody that will get up on a stage in front of public and say he's been on a UFO and will describe his trip. He says, that's the kind of people I want.
All right.
So it was interesting. Like I said, he was in, I would say, about the first maybe 2 years of his getting into UFOs, he was really convinced that there was something there. But later on, he was more or less just, how can we make some money off this interest? And so anything goes. And one of the things they have at the collection is the bogey UFO, which Mosley and Barker were riding down the road in this pickup truck, and this guy he had on a string a model of a UFO, and he hung it out in front of the pickup truck, so it looked like they were going down the road, and this thing is coming after the pickup truck, and of course they made a film about it, and that was called the Bogey UFO, and the Bogey UFO is in the museum, or in the library, so you can see it. Unfortunately, like a lot of things with Mosley and Gray Barker, they were just hoaxes.
Well, was that the S1 disc? Did you learn about the S1 disc, or did they call it that? It was something to do with you returned a refund on a S1 disc. Something to do. Was it something to raise money with? Maybe. Did you hear about that?
No,
Gray Barker.
I don't know about the S1 disc.
Surovic.
The Bogey UFO was Mosley used that on some of his. He used to visit college campuses and speak on UFOs. He used that in some of his speeches. Of course, it's the obvious. It's an obvious hoax. The other hoax they had, which people still believe this, is the Strat letter, supposedly a letter which was circulated to a number of UFO personalities like Coral Lorenzen and saying that their research had been recognized by the State Department, and we have all these things, and we're interested in encouraging you. And most everybody threw it in the trash can, but Abdamski used it as the State Department recognizes my work, recognizes my landing thing.
Well, he did write a book, didn't he, called The Silver Bridge? Did you get a copy of it?
Yeah, The Silver Bridge, yeah, no. I thought you were saying something else. I know about The Silver Bridge, yes.
Okay.
He had material about other West Virginia things, and of course the
Flatwood Monster or something.
Yeah,
like
the Flatwood Monster, 1952. He had a lot of material on that.
Was that real, or just assumed, or did he have affidavits or statements on that?
Yeah, he had all kinds of things. The West Virginia newspapers had a lot of material on that. They went out there, they got everybody together, all the supposed witnesses and everything. They got them all together and photographed them and interviewed them. Ivan Sanderson went down there and talked to him. Yeah.
That's an important piece of folk life in
yes,
our
it is.
folk life society.
It is it's well known. It's a legend down there, and it's part of West Virginia folklore.
Amazing.
Yeah, the bridges too. Of course, the bridge collapsed, and supposedly it was foretold in a prophecy. So the Mothman prophecy supposedly was foretold the collapse of the bridge. So that's another local legend there.
Well, is that really? It says the collapse of the Point Pleasant, West Virginia Silver Bridge, which killed almost 50 people in 1967, though it does describe the strange events that preceded the collapse, mainly the Mothman, a huge bird-like creature that terrorized the entire Ohio Valley, that looked into the old abandoned TNT power plant. Now, did you do anything on the Mothman, or was that far out?
My mission was to do 1947, so that was my main mission. But having a chance to visit Barker's collection, of course, I tried to avail myself of doing that. Every place I went, I tried to do other research, but the main mission was 1947, the year 1947.
So this would jump forward to 67, 20 years later with him and the Mothman, which got a lot of attention. A lot of people talk about that to this day, and then I think there's been even movies or at least documentaries in paranormal world.
Yeah, there is a Mothman movie that was made. I don't think it's by a professional, say, Hollywood movie maker. It was more like a documentary movie maker. The CIA had released the documents after a lawsuit, and that, Barker had been, like I say, promoting several hoaxes like the Strat letter, which I just didn't finish there. The Strat letter became a cause célèbre, and for the contactees. So there was, at the time, the government was kind of talking about enforcing the law that says, making fake government documents, you can be prosecuted.
Wow.
So
they were serious in that.
Yeah, they were serious at the time. They let they more or less let that go, and everybody's, you've got a sort of a rural industry of making phony government documents. But at the time, when the Strat letter came out, it was rather it was rather serious, and there was talk about trying to find the person that made it and prosecute him. So Barker talked to Mosley. Mosley said, "Look, I can get all kinds of government letterheads because Mosley's his father was connected to the government, and Mosley had money. His parents had money, so he said I could get all kinds of government letterhead on the QT, and we can make other false documents to throw people off the trail." And Barker didn't like that idea. What he did is he took his typewriter, cut it up, and hid it in the wall.
Wow.
So he was quite a bit scared. So, like I said, he said he was a promoter. He didn't ever say he was anybody else. Everybody says, "Oh, this was a great UFO researcher." No, he wasn't. He just if something came along that he could promote, he did that. And when the CIA documents came out, that just kind of threw him for a loop. And like the librarian told me there, that was a watershed moment for him. And he had them. He got copies of them, and he had them in his collection. And the librarian said this really bothered him. That they were CIA documents. He had more or less written UFOs off as just a medium that he could make some money off of, and this thing kind of bothered him. So he was kind of more or less made him look in a different light, and that was like I say, they're part of the collection down there.
Well, who was the Saucerian books?
That's him. That's him.
Oh,
the Saucerian books.
Published.
He had I would say
saucer book. They knew too much about flying saucers.
Right.
By
Jim
university
Moseley's
books.
book of flying saucers and
so he gets
all kinds of
other
other books. He was a publisher of these of strange happenings, and he probably had close to 75 to 100 of these books. Sometimes they were little pamphlets, but he did books. That's what he did.
He says about the author. It says later his firm, Saucerian Books, published many books in the same subject area. He has contributed UFO articles to many popular magazines, including Fate magazine, Amazing Stories magazine, Fantastic Universe magazine, and Flying Saucers. So Barker also produces and distributes educational motion picture films and serves as a consultant for a large firm dealing in audio-visual media. He freelances in public relations. So it's interesting.
He worked for the local school board down there in audio-visual.
Oh,
so
okay.
He did their audio-visual down there. He was, and like I said, he was a publisher, and he was.
Did you get to meet him before he passed in '84?
No. I never met him, but this was. He passed away while I was overseas, so I never got to meet him. But this was a first visit to a large collection of a person that had been involved from almost the beginning. He was an investigator for Bender down here, had the International Flying Saucer Society in Bridgeport, Connecticut.
Wow, I'm looking at some kind of ticket or something.
Barker was was his chief investigator. George Fawcett was an investigator for him. So, like I said, in the very beginning, he was very seriously interested in UFOs. Like he said, later he became more or less a promoter and a thing like that. And so,
well, he went to the UFO conference in 1980. Let's see. Is this June 20th?
He must have gone to dozens and dozens and dozens of UFO conferences.
This one
no
says National UFO Conference, June 20th, 22nd, Doral Inn, New York, New York. And we're pleased to confirm reservations. And he used the name John Mexitopoulos, but when he signed in, he registered with his own name, Gray Barker. And so that's in a PDF for historic reasons now, if anybody's interested. We ought to cut and paste this, I guess, and get this PDF with a copy of his book with a picture of him on the back and a few things. So we just put this in our I guess I'm going to have a hard drive strictly for our UFO Association. So it's debunker.com historical Gray Barker papers PDF. So I just plunked it in off of Google, and it came up, Clarksburg, West Virginia, Gray Barker, P.O. Box 2228. So interestingly enough, what else do you know? This guy, Prometheus Books, he wrote apparently about the UFO verdict, examining the evidence, due out soon in our Gray Barkers.
Like I said, he published between 75 and 100 UFO and
books?
paranormal books. So he was very a big publisher. Not like I said, they're publications, maybe not books. Some things, and he had his own little newsletter for a while.
Yeah, here's one of the Office of the Director
Assyrian
Project.
Bulletin. So,
Intercontinental UFO Galactic Spacecraft Research and Analytic Network, Inc. I've never heard of that, but here it is. So, International UFO Galactic
Spacecraft. Were not that well known.
Okay.
Some of the more well-known things he did with Moseley, and they had a feud going on for years. Name calling and all this other stuff. It was all for fun, though. They were just trying to get more leadership. So they had engaged in a UFO feud. But they, like I said, with the bogey UFO, that was a joint venture there. And of course, Moseley saying that he could make the Strat letter go away. When Barker died, Moseley came out and confessed to the Strat letter hoax, and he said, Barker was involved, and that he was so scared that he cut up his typewriter and hid it in the wall of a house, so in case anybody tried to trace it. So
was that covered? That his UFO looks like a UFO consultant. He's got a letter. It says, "Dear Gray, Editor-in-Chief of Saucerian," but there's a list of people that says Brinkley won't even touch it. So about UFO, there are certain things that certain people that you may know of now listed in some of these letters. So this is really interesting to look at. I don't know if people would be interested or not, but you've got a lot of stuff in your collections too. So
right.
Did you collect some of this Gray Barker stuff?
Yes, I did. Like I said, I made copies of many things there. He'd written to everybody just about in early ufology, one way or another. He had correspondence with people overseas. Some of these people revealed that they weren't the best kind of people. For instance, H.T. Wilkins was an anti-Semite. He and Barker corresponded when Wilkins' book first came out, Flying Saucers on the Attack, and all his letters, all of Wilkins' letters were anti-Semitic, attacking the Jews, talking about how bad they were. The guy he didn't write about UFOs to Barker. He wrote about how bad the Jews were. So that was a revelation that I really didn't expect to find. So, because Wilkins was very popular in the 50s. He'd written 2 books, and he had other. He wrote for Fate, and several other things. But like I said, every letter that he wrote to Barker, and there were lots of them, was about how bad the Jews were, not about UFOs at all.
Do you know who Morris Jessup was?
Yeah, he's an astronomer. He wrote the case for the UFO and the expanding case for the UFO, and he wrote several other things. He tried to become director of NICAP, except that Keogh sort of opposed him, and he wanted himself to be director. So Jessup stepped back, but he wrote two, I would say, successful books. Yeah.
Okay.
And he did have one book also had what could you say, an update about a 20-page update of things that had happened while the book was at the publisher. So, and he actually, Jessup, like I said, was an astronomer. He supposedly been to South Africa on some material. I have a little bit about him from the University of Michigan. I guess he did some research up there. I think he got his degree from the University of Michigan.
Jessup's background.
He was really an astronomer. He was an astronomer. Some people have said, "Oh no, this guy was a kook." No, he was. He maybe had some strange ideas, but he was actually an astronomer.
It says he had an instructor in astronomy and mathematics at the University of Michigan and Drake University, the jacket copy. One of his books notes that Jessup completed a thesis for the doctorate degree in astrophysics at the University of Michigan, though it does not state whether or not he was awarded his actual degree. So these are notes taken by Mr. Is this by Jessup? Gray Barker. Okay, this was in the Enigma of M.K. Jessup. He wrote a paper. It looks like.
Right. Well, Jessup fell on hard times, and he started. His only source of income was an astrology column that he did for a while, and he was really...
Looks like he died in Miami.
He committed suicide down there.
Ooh. You really did some research.
So he, like I say, he fell on hard times.
Wow.
And I guess he thought that was the only way out. He committed suicide. However, by that time, he'd long been out of the UFO field.
Now here it says flying saucers, Amherst, Wisconsin. I'm wondering what I'm looking at. The Enigma of M.K. Jessup. Was he writing for the people in Wisconsin, maybe?
No, I think that's where
flying saucers.
That was Ray Palmer. Mosley, Palmer, and Barker were known to collaborate.
Okay.
All the time. So if it's Amherst, Wisconsin, that's Ray Palmer, who founded Fate magazine and who wrote on the early stuff. He wrote a book with Kenneth Arnold called The Coming of the Saucers. So.
Wow, I didn't know that. The more I talk to you, the more interested I'm getting in the old guys and all the history that isn't really listed. You have to go find it and research it. So
yeah, there's the problem with Coming of the Saucers is there's a number of photographs that are in there, and several of them are real interesting. I'd like to find out more about them, but they only have minimal information in the book. One in
the case for the UFO. Let's see. This is the case for the UFO original hardcover. May have caused great official concern when a paperback copy was received by the Office of Naval Research. The case for the UFO.
Okay, yeah, that came from Carlos Allende, or this is another one of these characters that in the UFO business, and he just had fantastic stories. He was supposedly on a ship that a UFO went into the water and almost caused the ship to flip over, and Condon was interested in Allende, and he did a lot of research, and he's a lot of material about Allende is in his files, in Condon's files, but he's just a hoaxer and a con man.
So when we find UFO data, we need to make sure who is the author and cite the source so we can know whether or not we're reading information, disinformation, or misinformation, or just fairy tales or stories.
Well, you see, the problem with the what's called the Varro edition of Allende's, can you say book, I guess, is that supposedly naval intelligence had made notations on the side of the book, or Allende had made notations, and it pointed to some kind of secret in UFOs. How many times have we heard that? Oh, I know the secret of UFOs. How many times have we heard that? You know, like maybe 2,000. So it was. It had a sort of a following in the 50s, and like I say, Condon had correspondence with Allende.
Ivan T. Sanderson.
Carl. Oh, what the heck? I have his name here. He's not really a Hispanic guy. He's just used that version of his name when he wrote things. Sanderson was a cryptozoologist. He was interested in. He went on expeditions, and he collected information on zoology and things like that. And he was interested in UFOs also, and he wrote 2 books on UFOs, and one of them was the invisible. I'm having trouble with it. He had a rather interesting UFO sighting at the Delaware Water Gap. If you got the UFO evidence, you can find Sanderson's rather detailed sighting in there with the at the Delaware Water Gap. So that was.
Yeah, it looks
Sanderson was, like I say, interested in cryptozoology, things like giant squid, you know, the kraken.
Oh, yeah.
He was interested in things like that, and
so that Flatwood Monster might have fit in more.
Yeah, Flatwood Monster. He went down there and investigated that. He spent a lot of time. Sanderson did spend a lot of time down there investigating that case.
Says circa 51. However,
no, it was September 52 is the Flatwood Monster.
Okay, and yeah, then came circa 52, the old Saucerian magazine. More than your smear editor's Saucer News set a standard for ufological reporting that had never been equaled in the intervening years.
Who wrote that article? That
Saucer Smear.
Oh well,
it says James.
Yeah, it was Mosley. His buddy. His buddy said he wrote that. I mean, Parker's stuff did not rise to that level. It was rather poor, and
this is out of Florida, where I'm at, down here by Key West, but I'm in Gulf Breeze. It looks like Florida has been involved.
Mosley ended his days in Key West. We went down to interview Mosley, Tom Tillingen and I, and he said, I don't do interviews, but I agreed to do one with you guys, but he said only on the condition that we all get drunk when we do this interview.
Oh, my.
So that's what we did. We got drunk. And at the time, Mosley had fallen on hard times. I guess the building he lived in at one time was a real ritzy place. It had been subdivided into apartments that he sold off one after another, and he was living in the last one that he still owned. And it was kind of he had plenty of room there, but like he didn't have a bathroom. The bathroom was in the kitchen. He just pulled a curtain over it. So he was not, at the end, while he did come from money and he had inherited a lot of money, at the end he was in sad financial shape. Now, in 53, Mosley went on a expedition around the country, and he didn't supposedly to investigate UFOs, but his investigations leave much to be desired. He did, however, he did have a diary that he kept.
I found
he and
Barry's
Flock
name.
wrote a book together about the grave-robbing ufologists. So,
hey, your friend Barry Greenwood is listed here in Saucer Smear. Did you know that?
Doubt. Yeah, no doubt.
Really? Really? That's amazing. It's Bill Moore. Right here, folks, I'm looking at this PDF, but it's in the Saucer Smear. We were talking, we're just going over people with Jan Aldrich. If people would like to know who's speaking, Jan Aldrich is a very well-known historian and ufologist, and I'm very fortunate to have made his acquaintance through Dr. Bruce Maccabee and our ACO Club, Alien Contact Org, and UFO Club. So it's people in a community, and we hope to learn of each other. And Jan and I are just trying to get down a lot of these people that you may or may not have heard of. But Barry Greenwood came on my radio show through this gentleman, Jan Aldrich. So I'm really shocked. I'm reading this, and then here's Barry Greenwood. So I'm like, let's see what
of course.
it says.
Mosley used to call up Barry all the time and sometimes cry on his shoulder about things that were going on. He was always looking for gossip. He had what Saucer Smear was the last publication he had. He during the 50s and 60s and into the 70s, he had Saucer News, which had a pretty good number of subscribers. I don't think he ever made money on it, but like I said, he had money, so it didn't matter. It didn't matter because he spent his own money on it.
Sounds like me.
He used to, yeah.
Well, right
he
here
used to give Keo a hard time and NICAP a hard time. He liked to do that.
It looks
He liked
like
to be. He liked to be like the iconic class, and he was sort of the Men in Black thing too. He liked to. He took a picture of some guy in a dark with a black raincoat and a pork pie hat, which in the 50s everybody wore raincoats, those long raincoats, and everybody had a pork pie hat until Kennedy got in there, and Kennedy didn't wear hats, so so that ended the fashion. Everybody had to have a hat at the time because Kennedy didn't like hats. But Mosley took a picture of this guy. I mean, it's a rainy day, and he's standing under an awning trying to keep out of the rain. And Mosley said, "Oh, this is a man in black. He's been stalking me." And it was just some guy that had a raincoat, had a dark raincoat.
So did they
of course,
ever have
Mosley
any
had a
trouble
whole
with
bunch
FBI?
of people with him. So they all swore to it, and that was Mosley's thing with the Men in Black. And he had a big. These people believed him. I mean, he was a jokester, and he liked to make all these jokes up. And he was just being halfway serious there when they all believed him. So he just carried it on in his newsletter and everything about how I was stalked by the Men in Black and things like that.
Well, we do have those. I've worked with them, and I've had men around me. Even my daughter commented on the Men in Black when I was in Hawaii, because they'd stand up along the side while we swam at Sonoma Bay. Is that the name of it? It's been years ago, but and
the
my
Men
husband
the Men in Black started with
there's
Bender.
a history.
With
Okay,
Bender. Bender was the international flying saucer in Bridgeport, Connecticut.
Oh, where you are?
He started in
Connecticut.
52. Yeah. He started.
So we didn't have Men in Black before that. So you've done a complete where it shows up in.
Well, this is
the
first time. This is where the legend starts with Bender. So Bender wrote. He had this, like I said, UFO organization. It was one of the first. It was international. It had a branch in England and Australia and other places around the world. I think New Zealand and France. He had a pretty big subscriber base. This is 1952 now.
Well, what's his first name? You're saying Bender, so I can look him up. Because the Men in Black movie is what we think of Barry Sonnenfeld.
Albert. Oh, God, no.
Bender UFO, maybe. Let's see. Bender UFO.
So he was...
Brian Bender?
Huh?
Would it be Brian Bender UFO?
No.
No, Bender UFO. But you're saying, well, let me try Bender UFO Men in Black. How good? MIB UFO BENDER.
So the thing with the Men in Black was that he
Albert Bender?
Yeah.
Albert K. Bender, author of the 1962 nonfiction book Flying Saucers and the Three Men, was one of the most influential ufologists of the 1950s and 60s. He served in the United States Army Forces during World War II. Born June 16, 1961. Duryea. All right, so I would know that Men in Black came. I was, signed in May 10th, 1967, into doing my government background or SBI, So Bridgeport's Ufology Men in Black. Bridgeport. Now, why does Bridgeport get it for Albert K. Bender? So he gets credit.
That's where he lived. He lived in Connecticut.
Okay, so that's where. Interesting. Now, we don't write up history like this, do we? But we should, about the history of where it comes.
I think that a lot of people know about Bender.
Wikipedia wrote him up, so that's good.
Yeah, but you got to remember who writes for Wikipedia. It's a
I
bunch
don't
of
know.
people.
Why don't
Nobody
you tell us, everybody?
not necessarily people that know what they're talking about.
Everybody
sometimes it's very it's like fans and things like that. Here's what Bender started. Like I said, an organization in Connecticut. He went international. Like I say, Barker and George Fawcett were both investigators for it. Like I said at the time, I think Barker was serious about UFOs. I think in the early days he thought there was something to it. And of course, Fawcett was George Fawcett. I've seen a letter from Bender to Fawcett because Bender was telling Fawcett that he was too careless with his investigations, and he wanted him to tighten up his work. So I think at the beginning, Bender was rather serious about this subject too, and he, as he went on there, UFO organizations are hard to run. What do you want to do if you have a UFO organization? You want to investigate cases and find out things about UFOs, but what you have to do is you have to keep subscriber records, keep your publications going. It's a real pain in the neck.
Well, you and I just meet here and talk about all these people.
So here's
we're making our own UFO association. We're doing the who's who, because Albert K. Bender apparently started the Men in Black, and I worked in the government, and I worked with a lot of men in black. So I was a woman in black most of the time, but I was approached as an investigator.
I think that Bender was becoming disenchanted with all the work he had to do just to keep his organization alive and keep his subscribers updated and all these other things that he had to do.
What was the name of his group? Let's see. I can look it up. But
Flying
do you remember?
International Flying Saucer something or other.
Flying Saucers and the Three Men. I see a book, The UFO Buffs
Anyway,
Boogeyman.
it went on for into 53.
Yeah, creepy
in
men in black.
1953, this was a way to get out of the saucer business.
Oh, really?
He said,
how's that?
He said in his book he was tired of it. It was sort of dragging him down.
Aww.
And
how
do you get out of it? Well, you say that the government told you to stop.
Okay. It's
the
all
three men came
fault.
and told him to stop. Now, he went to the local newspaper in Bridgeport and talked about that. I mean, it's in the newspaper.
Okay, so
he
ergo
said,
Men in
he's
Black.
been told to stop by the three men. Later on in the UFO business, the three men became either government agents or maybe UFO occupants in disguise, and they became almost demonic in some cases. And like I said, Mosley took a picture of a guy in an overcoat and a pork pie hat, and he passed that off as a Men in Black. It was a joke.
You something.
It was
let
a
me
joke.
Tell you something.
And Mosley went ahead and said, and his followers just believed everything he told them. They were very gullible, and they just went right along with him. So he ran with it for all he could.
Well, we were covering a story in a weekly, I won't say which one, but I was a reporter for a weekly newspaper article, and it was an important article. And I had just come into town, into this particular town, and some men were walking out of the building where we were getting in our coverage, where we had the computers and the boards where you cut and paste your newspapers together. And they said, we can't run this. I said, what are you talking about? I've put all this information, research into it. Nope, that was FBI. They said, we can't run it. I was like, are you kidding me? I thought this, we're a little weekly newspaper. We're free press, right? They said, not when the FBI comes in. They can run it. So that does happen. They do come in and tell you can't run things.
Yeah, but here's the thing. In the 50s,
right?
In the 50s, everybody had an overcoat, a pork pie hat, and they were all dark. They all had dark suits.
Now
just look at some of the comedy. Just some of the comedy. Dennis the Menace. I mean, that's not even in the 50s. You look at Dennis the Menace. Everybody's dressed up the same way. They all look like they're. Yeah, they all look
for daddy.
Yeah, all those. Father knows best. Look at all how these people. That was like a uniform that
Ozzy
every
and Harriet.
middle class person
I remember
wore.
Those days. Sure, we had London fogs.
Yeah.
Remember London fog.
London fogs and pork pie hats.
Yeah.
And I was in grade school and I had a pork pie.
Okay.
So I had the hat. If we went somewhere, we dressed up. We wore a suit. I had the hat.
Did you have a bow tie or a thin? Did you have a thin or a fat tie? I don't know why they used to change them. Thin, fat, medium.
They had at the time, I think it was a fat tie. So I had a tie and I went downtown to do something one day, and my mother said, I don't want you going downtown in jeans. Dress up in a suit. And so I put on my suit with my hat, and there I am, 15 years old. I think I had to go to a doctor's office or something.
Aww.
She told me,
she told me
dress
like
up. She said, you don't go in your jeans and he said you go in a suit
back
tie.
then. I remember, when I had to get on like a party dress to go to the darn doctor, back in Monroe, Louisiana in the 50s. You had to wear the big slips and red or pink or
and on Friday night, everybody I was in Meriden, Connecticut. And Friday night, everybody went downtown to cash their checks, and they all got dressed up.
Wow!
And that's what you did. If you were a kid, you might get away with not wearing a suit, but all the adults got dressed up and went in and cashed their checks and went shopping, and they had money, so they were spending it on something, and they went to all the department stores downtown and things. That's a big deal. Friday night was a big deal in my hometown at the time, in the early 50s. In any case, like I say, I'm pretty sure that Bender tried to say, hey, this is why I have to quit, because the government made me. These three men made me stop. Now, when I was at Swords once, he said, well, I think one of the three men in black could have been Durant, Frederick Durant, who worked for the CIA. So we went and interviewed, Tom and I went and interviewed Fred Durant. And he was working for the CIA at the time, and he was the one that wrote the memo up for the Robertson panel. and he agreed to an interview, and he told us when he got there. No, I just, he said, I just did a oral history for the CIA, so he says, I know what I can talk about, and I know what I can't talk about. And he says, you know, is it okay if I take a picture of you guys? So I'm saying to myself, if this isn't CIA, I don't know what is. He's taking a picture. These guys tried to contact me about UFOs. That's essentially what he was doing.
He
told us, he said, I'm going to send this to Phil Klass, and he'll maybe use it in his newsletter. No, he never used it in his newsletter. It was for the CIA. We made a contact with a former CIA agent. So they usually...
Well, there's always CIA agents involved, and, you know...
Well, that's the CIA was the Robertson panel, where they had the scientists review the Air Force's data at in early '53. About
how
the
did they
same
get away with being in the country? Because in my day, when I came through, the FBI and the CIA shared offices in the United States of America, but that got reported and changed. They had to get out of America. So that was, let's see, was that the 80s? Yeah, I was at the 90s.
Okay,
that was
the
90s,
Office of Scientific Intelligence, which Durant worked for. He was a Navy pilot. He got a condition that meant that he had to drink fresh milk every day. And he's a Navy pilot. Well, you can't be on a carrier and get fresh milk out in the middle of the Pacific, because there's no cows on the aircraft carrier. So
his bones, or what was it? A condition?
I don't
skeletal?
know. He told us that he had to have a quart of fresh milk every day. Maybe it's
sounds
so he
terrible.
said that
lack of calcium.
And so he couldn't be a pilot anymore. So the Navy loaned him to the CIA, and he became president of the American Rocket Society. And he was at the time I don't think anybody knew that he was in the CIA at the time, because he was president of the American Rocket Society, and he would go overseas to all these conferences on rockets and missiles and things. And he'd meet the Russians over there, and they'd have some drinks and things. And so he was gathering information on what was going on in the field of rocketry. But like I said, he was involved in the UFO thing. His boss was Ed Taos.
Well, let me ask you a controversial question, since you know all these players back in the day. Do you believe that a lot of the UFO rocketry did use classified the UFO myth?
No,
like
they
Bill
obviously used German stuff.
They used
the Navy,
Hitler stuff.
The Navy was
cloak and dagger.
A lot of the people in the Navy felt that we had defeated the Germans, and so they had nothing to show us, and we didn't need to look at that. Durant told us there were a lot of people in the Navy that felt that what the Germans had was not worth looking at, but and so he said the Navy was they had more people in there that thought that the Germans had nothing to show us. However, the Army and the Air Force used captured V2s and things like that. And of course, when von Braun put up his satellite, that was just a souped up V2. I mean, with an extra stage on it.
Oh, so you don't give him any credit?
What, von Braun? Yeah, I do. The Germans.
Werner von Braun. It looks like von Braun, doesn't it? Braun, but they say it Brown. I guess it depends on who you're talking to. Werner von Braun.
Yeah, von Braun was, he started in the I guess I don't know how far back it goes. I think it may go back to the 20s. He started a rocketry society in Germany, and so he was in rockets from the very early times. There was
American German aerospace engineer. So he was born March 23rd, 1912 in Poland. He was actually Polish, but he actually died in Virginia.
It was German at the time. He was not Polish. He was
says Werner Magnilius.
He was born in Poland, but Poland belonged to Germany at the time.
Yeah, he developed rocket technology in Germany and a pioneer of rocket and space technology in the United States. Says he's buried in Alexandria, Virginia.
Yes.
So he died on June 16th, 1977. And it looks like he has three children.
And a number of his scientists and rocket engineers back to the United States, because when Germany surrendered, we were still fighting the Japanese, and they had intended to use the German scientists to upgrade our rocket program, and they made something like the V1 that basically based on the German stuff. And von Braun was down there at White Sands Missile Range.
Yeah,
and then he went to Alabama, and
Huntsville.
He and a number
I was there
of now Durant, being the head of the American Rocket Society as a CIA agent. I mean, this is so he knew von Braun, and von Braun wrote a paper, and they would not let the von Braun leave the United States at the time. He couldn't go anywhere. He was under close hold. So Durant took his paper to Italy and read it at the International Astronautics Society. So that's how that's one of the things Durant did for von Braun. Now, as far as the, like I said, Swords asked me to ask Durant, were you one of the three men in black that went to Bender's? Because somehow Swords got the idea that Durant was one of the guys that went and visited Bender. So I asked him, and of course he said no. He didn't know what I was talking about. He wasn't that familiar with. He knew about what happened in '52 when the Air Force said that, but he hadn't kept. Let's put it this way: he had only been dipped back into UFOs every once in a while in his capacity at the CIA. But he, like I said, he wrote the memo, and for Ed Taus, who was his boss, he had written papers on ball lightning and Foo Fighters. Before the CIA got involved in '52 in the reinvestigating what the Air Force had done, Taus was interested in UFOs, and he told, and Durant worked for Taus, so Taus asked him to write papers on ball lightning and Foo Fighters. So he did. He told us he did, and we tried to get a copy of the Foo Fighter paper. The CIA said they didn't know anything about it, which is par for the course with them.
Well, I guess you had to know how to get a copy.
Yeah.
They had people in that group. The case of the UFO underground. Foo Fighter was a newsletter, or what was it exactly? A magazine?
Foo Fighter was cited by the Allied pilots in Germany and Japan, and actually all over the world. And they were not just cited by the Americans. Later on, we found out that they were reported by the Germans also, and they were a forerunner of UFOs. So.
Well, you were wanting a Foo Fighter magazine, or what were you? A UFO Guide to Fate magazine. Media consultant.
No, I didn't have anything to do with Fate magazine, and I did not have a Foo Fighter magazine. This was.
What were they asking the CIA for? They didn't know about.
Durant was in the CIA. He wrote a paper for his boss.
Oh, now I got it.
Yeah, he wrote a paper for his boss. He also wrote a paper on ball lightning. So he had he didn't remember too much about what was in the paper, but he said, "Yeah, I used Army, Air Force, and Navy material from the Second World War to write his paper." So he was, like I said, he did that at the time that the CIA was investigating the Air Force's UFO Project Blue Book, in 1952.
Well, so this guy Barry Greenwood was around in the 80s. That was your time as well?
Yeah, well, 80s? Yeah, I came back in 94 from overseas. So I met Barry, I think, in 94. I met him in 94.
How did y'all meet? I know we mentioned it
once
a long time ago.
We didn't meet physically. We just met. Somebody said, I told people I was doing historical research and things, so said you should call this guy. He does historical research too. So I called him up and we talked, and he was telling me some of the things he'd done, and he offered to send me some stuff, and so we talked for a while, and I said, I've already done that research on that. We found out that we had already done a lot of the same things. So the idea was that so we said, okay, well, look, if you find anything new, I'll send it to you. You find anything new, you send it to me. And that way, if something gets lost, we'll have a copy at another place. So that's what we started to do. So that we've been doing that for almost 25, 30 years now.
And now with all this by two gentlemen, and there's gentlemen all over the world with their own history of doing this type of work as ufologists, historians, researchers, and what is all this? We hope it's going to be put somewhere, but we don't really know yet where the big UFO, I'm calling it the UFO Association, but, not being skeptical, but being, I don't know, I'm trying to be unbiased and unopinionated and nonpartisan about all this, but I've had my own near-death and my own UFO experiences, so I don't know how that's going to work because people get poo-pooed on that have had anything to do with this, but I'm trying to be objective with you and listen and ask the right questions when I can. But what do you think all this is going to mean? Because we want this to have credence for information disclosure with all these groups that have been around forever, it seems, at least since Foo Fighters. And he was there with, I'd like you to tell me what you know about this Bill Moore, because his name's with Barry Greenwood's and some of this Gray Barker, is that his name? Bob Gray, Dear Gray. I can't think of his last name.
Barker.
I thought, Barker. Okay, so that's all right. So at this particular time, you guys did come together doing all this stuff and met in 97 then? Is that when you met him?
94.
All right,
I
so
maybe
94.
even talked to him in 93.
All right, but you haven't physically met till only recently in Chicago?
Oh, yeah, we met several times, but at the time we didn't meet. When I started going around the country,
on your project.
Yeah, on my project, I met him towards the end of the project. So,
well, he apparently was some type of speaker, and for a New York a speaker because he was on with Bill Moore and some other people that you would know their names.
That must
probably.
have been a one-time thing. He's kind of like me. He doesn't do that many speaking occasions. He did write Clear Intent with Larry Fawcett, who was a retired police officer. He wrote Clear Intent, which is, I think, was if it wasn't a bestseller, it was the next thing to a bestseller. So there's all kinds of copies running around. There's probably a really broad look at government. Is probably one of the best and first looks at government involvement in the UFO field. A lot of different offices within the government. So he had found the first official Foo Fighter documents at the archives, and look, the Foo Fighters were reported in the 40s, and nobody had found. Now, there had been a few documents that had come out, more or less, but he was the first one to find official documents in the archives of Foo Fighters, and that was in 1994. Look at that. That's almost 50 years after they've been reported, and
so
nobody could find them. He found them.
Oh, there you go. That's a good way to get known among researchers, is find something that everybody's been looking for. That's like an Indiana Jones story.
Well, they did a lot of, Clear Intent is, I would say Clear Intent is required reading for anybody that's interested in UFOs. All right,
by Barry Greenwood. It says,
Barry Greenwood and Larry Fawcett.
Helen Wheels, Nardid Rockstar, our UFO Larry Warren, Wheels and Warren. I'm reading this. It's really a long typed record, but where Barry's name is, and it is Gray Roscoe Barker's Saucer Smear. So this is down, let's see, page 1, page 2, Saucer Smear, page 3 maybe. Let's see, where did I just see his name? Is it down on page 4?
Remember,
I'm looking for Barry's name.
I said that Mosley knew Barry, and he used to call Barry all the time and look for little tidbits and cry on his shoulder about somebody said something bad about him. Mosley was. He was looking for material for his Saucer Spear magazine.
All right, this is, and speaking of conventions, we had to miss the second annual SBI convention on Staten Island, New York, last November 4th. Why it was held just 2 days before the presidential election, we do not know. But we do know that Geraldine Ferraro, who was rumored to be an intended attendee, did not show up. Nardid Rockstar, Helen Wheels, our UFO citer, Larry Warren. Wheels and Warren were listed. Ferraro was not. And another missing element was a movie film that purported to show UFO over a New Jersey Turnpike. Among the speakers who did participate were, now this is history, Larry Fawcett, Barry Greenwood, Bud Hopkins, Philip Imbrogno, Antonio Junius, and of course Pete Mazzola, who was head of the SBI with the sponsor of the event. About 250 members showed up. Public showed up in spite of the difficult to reach location, and the hall had to be almost full. Among the non-attendees, we need to know that. So there you go. So Larry was on stage apparently at the same time Bud Hopkins was, Larry Fawcett. So he was a speaker at the UFO conference.
Yeah, they were. SBI was. It was also an organization that tried to do historical and government research. So yeah, they were sort of allies and everything.
Okay. Now, Bill Moore.
It's a short-lived organization. I don't think it was no more than 3 or 4 years. And they published a bulletin. I can't remember what SBI stood for. Special
SBI?
Bureau of Investigation, something like that.
Oh, okay. Well, I see Bill Moore.
I mean, they did do good stuff.
MUFON.
They did do good stuff. They they found an article by Sergeant Ed Clark, who was a writer for Stars and Stripes during the war, and it was a World War II thing about Foo Fighters that SBI found. It was a good article. Nobody had seen it. It was in Stars and Stripes. We found out later that Sergeant Clark on Christmas Eve in 1944 went up with one of the night fighters from a base in France, the 415th Night Fighter Squadron, and on that night he saw a Foo Fighter himself. So and he couldn't. He wrote about his going up with night fighters and his experience, but they wouldn't let him write about the Foo Fighter, so he didn't write about it until 1950 after he was out of the Army. But like I said, at the time, he did write an article about Foo Fighters and the 415th and how they were hoping that because they sent some kind of scientists to go question the 415th pilots, and the pilots were hoping that that their reports were being taken seriously, and so that's Ed Clark wrote, like I said, wrote up about that. He didn't write about his own experience until 1950 when he was out of the Army, and he was writing for a newspaper in Hawaii.
Well, the next page talks about Gray Barker, the editor in West Virginia, and whenever it fitted, mutual schedules. On a particular occasion, 57, a young friend of Barker's, relative high in government, had provided Barker with a packet of genuine official stationery from various government agencies. Now, this is a guy, I guess his friend still. To the best of present recollection, through the mist of time, Barker and I wrote not only one but 7 naughty letters, emboldened by the evil of alcohol and fully enjoying hilarity to throw long-term confusion into the UFO field. Of the 7 letters, only one signed R.E. Strath, in deference to R.E. Palmer, achieved immortality. One of the others went to Carl Lorenzen of APRO. Another went to Laurie Mundo, a longtime Pre-Adamski researcher. Still another went to Inner Circle of the Old Civilian Saucer Intelligence of New York, CSI, Isabel Davis, Ted Blocher, and Lex Maybane. There are 2 of the 7 that we can't remember, anything about at this stage, but were written on a different genuine letterhead. So they were trying to throw smoke bombs. I wonder why they would do that.
Because that's the kind of people they were. They were not serious. They were not serious. Like I said, Gray Barker was only serious for his first 2 years. After that, he described himself as a promoter. He's a promoter. He wanted people that would say they've been on a spaceship.
Yeah, they were looking into
He told this one guy, I don't want a fiction. I don't want a fiction about extraterrestrials. I want you to get up and say at a conference or a lecture hall that you've been on a spaceship and you know what the extraterrestrials look like and what did they say to you. That's the kind of person he was. Mosley,
so they started with
Mosley was a jokester, and he may have had some. There were times when he did serious work. Like I said, he went around the country in 1953, and he kept a diary, and he gave it to somebody in New Jersey, who I don't recall right offhand. But,
have to find that, huh?
So these guys were jokesters.
So Damsky revealed the letter. He thought that was interesting that his claims, despite the government warnings, not to do so.
Letter. I mean, like I said, well, like Mosley said, they wrote this letter under the influence of alcohol. Nobody else took it seriously. Everybody else they sent one to, they threw him away.
Yeah, apparently this is an apology.
Didn't take it seriously. She knew it was a fake. Damsky and his followers argued for years that this thing is true.
Wow.
And
so
finally, when Barker died, Mosley said, yeah, we did that.
January 10th, 1985 is where he admits it. Any historians out there, the saucer smear, dedicated to the highest principles of ufological journalism, official publication of the Saucer and Unexplained Celestial Events Research Society in Key West, Florida. Supreme Commander James Mosley. So this type of stuff lives on through whatever we create in the future, but only to make sure the names get spelled correctly and the history be written up properly. Do you think the History Channel did a good job, or would you like to go in and make notes? We've got about 30 minutes left. Is there anything you'd like
No, they didn't do a good job. First of all, some of the cases that Hynek was supposed to be investigating in the History Channel, he didn't even touch. He didn't go into those things. The other thing is some of the things that supposedly were in Blue Book, they weren't in Blue Book, and most of the cases were they don't bear any resemblance to the truth. These guys just made up a bunch of Hollywood junk. And
would you
the
compare
second
them with
season is going to be even worse.
Would you compare them with Gray Barker?
On the second season. What's that?
Would you compare them with this Mosley and Gray Barker then?
Yeah, I would. I would. They're even worse because I told them, I said, look, Hynek had some amazing adventures while he was working for the Air Force, but you guys could find it very easily, but you decided to make things up, like the pilot in North Dakota there.
Where are they getting their data?
You turned him into a homicidal person. I mean, this is a guy that had served his country, and so that you think you can get ratings by making him into some kind of a homicidal person. You dishonor his name, and he gave this testimony about a UFO case that he was involved in. why is that? Why did you need to do that? Why did you need to soup this thing up? Everybody needs to, every time TV and movies get involved with UFOs, they have to soup it up and Hollywood it up. Put spins on it. Now here's this is what I told these guys. I said, look, in the early 50s, this pilot for Mohawk Airlines had a sighting. This is what Hynek did. He told them to go out to report to this building in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where Hynek was working at the time. And Hynek had one of the scientists there go down and blindfold this guy when he came to the building. They walked him around the building so he wouldn't know where he'd been. Put him on an elevator, and then when he came up on the elevator, they took the blindfold off. Now that's an interesting thing that Hynek did. He didn't want this UFO witness, to know where he was questioned at. He was questioned at
the Army too, and the people I worked with.
Well, that's so you know. That's I said. Now this is an episode you should have written on. This is something interesting. Hynek went down to to South America with a Cuban refugee scientist from Florida, and they went around and visited witnesses and ufologists in South America. During one of these visits, Hynek was he was told to get in this taxi and go out to talk to these people way out in the country. Well, kind of naively, he did go. Both of these guys went out with a taxi driver, and when they got to their supposed destination, they met some really bad people that were probably going to do Hynek harm. And the taxi driver came back and saved them. I said, now, isn't that an interesting episode that you could have for your UFO thing about his visit to South America, and where he had, if the taxi driver hadn't come back, he would be out in the middle of nowhere, and they probably would have carved him up and threw him in a pit somewhere or buried and nobody would ever know about him again. I said, isn't that an interesting thing you should do? No, they're not interested in that. I told them about now Hynek wasn't involved in this, but the Matador, Texas thing, where the grandmother, mother, and granddaughter were involved in a UFO sighting, very early, one of the earliest close approach cases. And I told him, I said, this is an important case in the UFO files, but everybody wants to do the Lubbock Lights. I said, the Lubbock Lights is not as interesting as this thing. These people saw this during the daytime. It was huge, and when it left, it left in a blinding flash of light that was brighter than the sun, and at a high rate of speed that they'd never seen anything like this. Now, these were women that had been married to Air Force pilots, so they knew what the latest jets looked like, and they were faster than that. So, and the little girl heard a noise that was the other two, the grandmother and the mother couldn't hear. You know, young people have better hearing than older people. she recognized the sound and started yelling out, Mighty Mouse, who was on the radio at the time. Used to have a program. I said, that's a better case than what you've been doing. They already think they know everything, so it's impossible to talk to these people.
Well, it depends on
I'm
who's
not
writing the
impressed by
story.
that thing at all. I'm not impressed by what's been on the History Channel.
Well, don't
I think
you think
at one
it
time they
depends
did
on
good work,
the
but they don't
producers?
do it anymore. What's that?
Well, Prometheus Entertainment is who I usually see doing the production. It's on the A&E Network, is it not? Or History Channel? Let's see, our famous brands. History, but the History Channel, usually you will see that it's produced by Prometheus Entertainment. I saw that word in the earlier books of our collection here.
Yeah, they called me up and asked me opinions on things, and I told them that no.
Well, if they're going to do the history, and the History Channel wants to know the facts.
Yeah,
maybe
that's right, and they don't. They just want to
they want to know the facts?
They just want to do sensational programs.
Entertainment. Okay,
right,
educational entertainment with a twist, rather than just get the facts, which I was always told in the court of law, I had to just get the facts, ma'am, just get the facts. Right. You know, they didn't want just get the facts. Affidavit statements, they wanted in writing, third party, you know. Or then if I carried forensics, I had to have the chain of command. I mean, I couldn't, my work, you got to do your work, and you got to make sure that, you know, chain of evidence, everything you do, you've got writing for. It's amazing work. So you're saying that this project with the History Channel, even though they called you for instructions or advice, well, they would ask you a question, but then if you didn't give them the answer they wanted, they would go to the next person? Or?
They ignored everything I said. I gave them hints. I gave them ideas. They weren't interested. They already had their decisions made.
Well, I've seen Nick Pope moved out there from the UK. He's getting a lot of coverage with the History Channel now.
Yeah, but they like I say, they're hyping things up. Yeah. It's
now
nothing
they covered
like
the Flatwoods Monster. I'm looking now at Project Blue Book, January 21st. But the Flatwoods Monster, which we were just talking about on this series in this book in this episode, it says the Flatwood Monster aired on January 15th, 2019. The Lubbock's on the 22nd, 2019.
Now Hynek was not involved with the Flatwood Monster at all.
Foo Fighters, February. See more. All right, so apparently they're going to have a season 2.
Yes, they are.
Historically, since you've been called, did you say who all are you calling to get your history straight?
I told them that. I said, look, this is bad stuff. That's why I don't like to participate in these kind of things, because people will think that I'm advocating for this kind of thing. I did the Smithsonian Channel. I did an interview with them. I did on Milton Torres's sighting in England in 1956. Because I had interviewed Milton Torres with
That's
Tom,
important.
and we had him on tape and everything, and he was very cooperative, and he was very objective. He didn't say, "Well, I'm sure I saw an extraterrestrial thing." He said, "I saw something. I couldn't tell you what it was." And he said, so besides Milton Torres, I did the 1952 case at Kirkland Air Force Base, New Mexico, where the pilot had shot at a UFO. He was chasing a UFO, and it kept playing cat and mouse with him, so he finally just fired on it. And so I told and they wanted me to do the version in Ruppel's books, and I said, listen, I know more about this case than what is in the report on unidentified flying objects. I said, I talked to the intelligence officer that investigated the case at Kirkland, and I have Dr. Thornton Page's notes from the Robertson panel, and the Robertson panel did discuss this case, and Page made notes, and I said, this is the only other, really the only other source that we have for the Robertson panel besides the memo that Frederick Durant made up about the Robertson panel. But I said Page made extensive notes about the Kirkland Air Force Base and the pilot firing on the UFO. So I said, I have more information than just one book, and because they were challenging me on what I was saying, because everything that's in Ruppelt isn't. I had more information. They said, "Where'd you get this information?" I said, "This is the only source." And I said, "No, you're wrong." I said, "I have Thornton Page's notes, and I interviewed the intelligence officer at Kirkland Air Force Base, so I know more about this case than just what's in report on unidentified flying objects."
And they didn't want to use it?
They used it. They used it.
Ah.
Of course, they had somebody come on and afterwards and debunk the case after I was on there. That's the way they always do it. Listen, if they feel like, I feel like when I'm doing these, if I do a program for some of these people, I feel like it's cowboys and Indians. So here's what you do. You say what. First of all, you get the first shot at it. You get to talk about the case and everything. Then they have somebody come on as an expert to knock you down. You don't get to answer.
You get to rebut.
After you've done your presentation, they go and ask this other guy, and they put his presentation afterwards, which says that everything that was just said, we told you, was trash and junk, and that's the way that's the way most of these UFO programs work.
Well, it used to be we got two sides and then the truth, and you could formulate your own perception with your own filters.
You don't get that anymore. You get somebody that hasn't even ever apparently looked at the case.
That's not good.
And
that's like when you go to a doctor. It's better before you get your appendix out to have two. If you're not in trouble that much or anything, your heart worked on, or is to get another doctor's opinion, right? Get two opinions at least before you go get stuff cut off.
Or the thing that I've noticed with these, like the Smithsonian, they got my thing and they ran it straight, and then they had somebody come on afterwards and then completely tear it apart. So that's
discovery.
And then I didn't get to answer. I didn't get to say, well, this guy's argument is incorrect because he doesn't know about the case at all. He's just telling you incomplete. He's giving you incomplete information about the case, and I didn't get to do that. You don't get to answer it.
That's an interesting point that people should keep in mind too when they're listening.
That's why I don't like to go on these programs.
Well, the history.
In fact, what I did with the Smithsonian, I said, listen, you're going to have the benefit of my research, and I said I expect to get paid for this. Usually, that's it. The people go away then. Right after that, after you tell them you want some money, they're gone. So that's a good way to get rid of them. These guys they kept pushing me, and I said, you know what you're going to. I know what you're going to do. I know you're going to have somebody come on after I've been on the program. I said, I know what you're going to do. It's been done so many times to people. You're going to have somebody come on and say, despite what this guy said, here's the real truth. And that's exactly what they did. I said, okay, if I'm going to go on a show like that, I expect to get money for it. So that's, and as I said before, most of the time they want their research for free. They want you to tell them, or if you appear on there, they just want you on there for free. So I said, no, that's what I'm not going to do anymore. So if you mention that you want money, they're out of town.
So they use all these people that like to be on television and help them. I wonder if they pay Nick Pope on the History Channel.
I am sure he's in the Actors Guild, like Stan Freeman was. Stan Freeman was in the Actors Guild. He had to get at least $2,000 an appearance.
Really?
Really.
That must have been. Okay. Well, he was willing to do a conference with me for nothing as long as we paid for his hotel and meals and give him a table.
Yeah, that's a conference. That's not a television show.
But he was smart enough to be in the Screen Actors Guild of America. And
right. You have to pay dues and things like that, though. So.
Oh, yeah. Not everybody.
Yeah, but I mean, he appeared on enough programs and things, so it made it worth his while.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty expensive. The national fee is $3,000 right now. Annual base dues is $201.96. But it's amazing, Screen Actors Guild. But now they've got the SAG and AFTRA. They made it SAG-AFTRA. Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of Television and Radio Artists. They pulled it together in 2012, so that's sort of nice. But it's affiliated with the AFL-CIO, International Federation of Journalists as well. So it all works together, I guess. But, yeah, it'd be nice to get paid if you're done all this and pull it together. But at the same time, you and I are the old guys now. We're trying to pull together something to historically say we're doing some oral reports before we forget it. Or know what should be talked about. And how did you ever tell us, let's see, we've only got about 10 minutes left, but have you anything of the Bill Moore case? Were you pro or con? Because I just happened to pull up Bill Moore, Thomas Gates.
Of all people, that was Bender was involved in that, and APRO was involved in that, and
what was that about with the aviary and Bill Moore? Was any of that true? Bill Moore said he was working for the government.
I thought you said the billboard case.
Oh, well.
You wanted
the billboard case? Maybe we should talk about that.
Okay. Okay.
Save that for next week then. But Bill Moore.
Bill Moore. Bill Moore went to MUFON conference in Las Vegas. He got up and said, "Well, I have been an unpaid disinformation agent for the government." So then everything he said is then suspect, I would say. But I don't believe that he's an unpaid government agent. I believe that he was, like I said about the MJ-12 before, I think that Bill Moore was in the middle of that. I think he maybe didn't hatch the idea of MJ-12, but he sure promoted it. And he got Bob Pratt to write a novel about MJ-12, and that was going to be the basis, I guess, of a movie. And then we got years of promotion. You know, he'd make a new discovery. Here's a new discovery about MJ12, and we're finding more out all the time. You know, we're sort of getting that now in you. And the latest thing is, it goes on and on and on. They tease you and tease you and tease you, and the problem that happened with Moore is
William
Timothy
Moore and
Good.
Richard
Timothy
Doty.
Good went ahead and scooped Bill Moore. Now I don't see why he stopped with his MJ12 activity. Even if Timothy Good had scooped him, he could still go on with it, but it just came crashing down for him. And then he went to Las Vegas and said, I'm an unpaid government agent, which I don't believe he's an unpaid government agent. I believe he was doing that to make money. And that's that, and I don't believe that many of the things that he was involved in were true.
Says both Doty and Collins deny any involvement in the MJ12 affair. However, Linda Howe has issued a sworn affidavit agreeing to the course of her meeting with Richard Falcon, I guess that was his code name, Falcon, Falcon Doty, at KAFB in 1983. Thus far, Doty has not issued a sworn affidavit or agreed to testify under penalty of perjury to reinforce his denial that the events of his meeting with Howe occurred as she has described them. Let's see where this is. Falcon and Condor have been identified. So Doty, well, who was Condor? Let's see, Richard and Bob Collins to see whether those activities. Who was Condor? Let's begin with Doty.
Everybody had a name. John Alexander had a name. A bird. Hal Puthoff had a bird. There were dozens of them.
And they weren't trying to hoax people, or you think they were? Their credibility.
I think some of them were hoaxing people. I think some of them were involved in the whole business. And I think some of them were involved from the very beginning.
Well, Dr.
I would say,
McAfee
from what I know about Bill Pratt's novel, it was supposed to be like an autobiographical thing about Doty. I mean, there was a special agent that was the hero of the book. And that was the basis that Moore wrote produced his MJ12 material from.
Well, it says it was Enclosure H is exposed, written by Bob Pratt, published January 84 issue of the MUFON Journal, describing his investigation of this hoax. Now, it says, I'm reading something here that says sacredtext.com. I don't know if we should use that or not. It says the MJ Affair, Facts, Questions, and Comments. Literary Freeware Foundation. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, I've heard of them. And,
are they factual, or are they getting the facts?
I think what you have there is a pretty, actually a pretty close to the truth commentary on what happened. I think
it's hard to read. It says
I think
it's
a pretty good.
Who is Hastings? Robert Hastings.
Robert Hastings was he's UFOs and Nukes. He wrote a book called UFO and Nukes. He's interested in UFOs around nuclear installations. So he wrote a book, and he also had a documentary that he made about UFOs and nukes. He's interviewed, I'd say, close to 100 people that have worked or investigated sightings that involve nuclear facilities. So
I see.
He's a pretty knowledgeable guy. He was with when Randall and Schmidt were doing their work. He was involved in that. They used to use him as a sounding board when they talked to witnesses. He would.
Well, he CC's your friend Barry Greenwood on this. Barry's listed as a CC. Now, I don't see Jan on here. Jan Aldrich is a CC. And if not, why not? Linda Howell, Bud Hopkins, Richard Hall. So they know Barry Greenwood. It must be Bud Hopkins, Richard Hall. Let me see when this was written. It says he could be reached at 6200 U-Book Boulevard, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and a phone number. Let me see if there's a date on this, but it's under the source sacred-text, just so you know. You may want to put a copy of this in your files, but it's black on green. Sacred text, esoteric occult mysteries, the MJ12 of Fairfax, questions, comments. Dang it. Oh, there it is, March 1st, 1989. So
okay,
this is
so I was overseas then. I wasn't working on anything like that. I really don't want to get into
stuff.
Barry's been working on that for years, and he spent a lot of time, and it's a false trail, and
I'd like to know why I got involved. I'd like to know why I was directed on this case. I want to know why. So maybe I should have Barry call me or get Barry.
Well,
I'd like to know more about
Barry
has.
He has tons of documents on the case. It was like I was going to say. It keeps you off regular research.
Is that what it does? Okay.
Yeah, it's like a red herring. It just.
Oh, okay.
And so, people.
Well, I was on the case, so I want to find out why. There's a lot of red herrings out there, so I think my job was to get at the bottom between the misinformation, disinformation, and information, because I was trained in propaganda, but also business intelligence and security. So I don't know. I don't know my part. I just hope I'm doing the fact finding properly. All I want is to get the facts, ma'am.
Yeah.
That's my job, is just to be the best journalist, investigative reporter. Get the facts, ma'am. Now, remember, Dr. Bruce Maccabee was the one that threw me a lifeline with you for our ACO, which he helped me start years ago. But he said, TJ, he can't do much right now. But I did get to see him on television. I don't remember which one recently. So I hope Dr. Maccabee and Jan are doing great. The other Jan Maccabee. But he met her, and they MUFON at a conference, I believe. That's what he said in his history. I've had him on 2 or 3 times. And it's funny, I start wanting to find out stuff he may know. And he's a good interviewer. He gets interviewing me, and it's really an interesting time. Well, Jan, we've reached our time here, so I guess we'll keep going. Next book, episode 8. Who knows where we'll go, folks? We're sort of learning a lot of things that's in Jan's head, and whatever comes up, comes up. It's trying to keep it amusing, but keeping it real here, folks. So, Jan Aldrich, we appreciate all your time and energy and collections and where we're going with this. We hope that everybody's going to help each other find out who's got what, and I don't know if it's going to be open source or in books yet or what. I think it's a little bit of everything. Just depends on who wants it. Any last words, Jan, for our listeners?
Where
can they get in contact with you?
Well, you can always email me at project1947 at earthlink.net, 860-546-9135. I'm on Facebook, and Project 1947 is on Facebook also, and Project 1947 is on the web. The website is www.project.1947.com.
Well, thank you. I find this all very curious and coincidental that I was brought up with the name Jan and Jan Maccabee, or Jan, as we were pointed out with one guy last time, and I was called Janette, but I was brought up being called Jan, and then I heard about it foreigner that say Jan, and then there's Janet Airlines, and there's Jan Harzan for Mutual UFO Director, and Janet Lesson doing the Anunnaki stories with her husband over in Hawaii and my Ascension Center. And there's a whole bunch going on with different levels and different words, and working with ufology and epistemology and phenomenology, and we've added alienology, and not to mention cryptozoology and X-Files with the Men in Black. So stay with us, and I had no idea there was so much history out there that we don't even know about, and I'm learning a lot from Jan. So thank you, Jan, bringing up names that we can go look at, Barker, and whether it was pro or con, Mosley or whatever, it's still an interesting read for those that collect comic books or magazines or Fate magazine or whoever else out there. We can let you know about Ace Folk Life, American Communications Online. Well, thank you, Jan, for helping us establish our UFO press, because we got the UFO Association, but it's been mostly word of mouth. People that we're in an unincorporated association for all you federal government people out there. We're really not collecting any money right now, but we know we always can enjoy any kind of subscription help out there. So we're hopefully going to build things, but check in on project1947.com. Isn't it .com or .org, Jan?
Yeah, it's .com, because we used to sell some books on there, so it was commercial.
All right, Jan Aldrich, and he's helping me out over here and representing the UFO business pretty darn good. And weekly, we're just calling it a book. It's an oral report, and this was episode 7. So look forward to next week. We hope we're not boring you to death with facts, but we're about getting the facts down on paper, folks. And we try to be a little humorous here and there, I guess, but we're not jokesters. We're just get the facts. All right. Thank you, Jan. I look forward to your next week, and you can find us on iTunes, iHeart, Spreaker, Stitcher. Oh, gosh, so many. FM radio, Blueberry, all the big wherever you get your podcast. I pay extra money for distribution where I have to, and SoundCloud and all those. So I'm Theresa J. Morris with Jan Aldrich, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you, Jan. Appreciate it. Think you're doing a great job. Bye now. Thank you.